Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP, and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Today's show, we're going to be talking about organ transplants. Right now, the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, a public and private partnership that manages the organ donation and transplantation system in the United States, says over 104,000 people are waiting on organ transplant lists in the country. That means there are about 2,800 people, adults and children, on transplant lists here in Tennessee. These patients are waiting for life-saving gifts like a kidney, a heart, a lung, or a liver. Unfortunately, the reality is that many of these patients, 17 every day across the country, die while waiting for an organ. There are two types of organ donors: living donors, who can donate an organ like a kidney or part of a liver or pancreas, and deceased donors, those whose organs are donated after they pass away. Deceased donors, or a donor hero, can save up to 8 lives and improve the lives of up to 75 others through their gifts. I'd like to dispel a common fear right now, which every medical professional that we spoke of made sure to affirm. If you are a registered donor, your medical care will not be compromised in any way. So now, joining us to share her story is Jadeka Maison. She lives in Gallatin, and her teenage son was a donor hero. Jay, we're so welcome and honored to have you here. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thank you.
How you doing today?
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I have to take it one day at a time.
I understand.
But I'm okay.
Well, I'm really glad that you're here.
I'm happy to be here. Anytime I'm needed. Just a phone call away.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. I understand your son, Anthony Jr., who you and your family lovingly called Peanut, was a really special person who touched a lot of folks' lives. He loved gaming, cars. He was a whiz at fixing things.
He was.
With his hands. And it was his dream to become an airplane or auto mechanic. As a young teenager, just turned 15, he became a donor hero. And I'm really, really, truly sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Tell me this. What did you love most about Peanut?
I think, there are so many things, but his personality, just in general, he was quiet and reserved unless you knew him. And if you really knew him, he was this other character. I'm like, who are you and what did you do with my son? He would say things, just the way he would talk to you about things. He would give you a perspective that you never, would have thought. And he was very blunt.
Okay.
Very brutally honest. He would call you on your mess.
Yeah. And
in a way that would just, you couldn't really argue with. He was just really just witty, yeah. But he loved really hard. He would just randomly just come up and hug and just say, I love you. And and as a matter of fact, those were the last words that he said to me before everything happened. Those were his last words to me. I love you. And I said, I love you too, baby.
I know this is kind of difficult for you to talk about. And again, we are grateful for your courage and willingness to come here and to talk with us, because it really does help a lot of other people and families. I understand that Peanut was the victim.
He was.
Of a violent crime.
He was.
You woke up one morning with your son alive.
Yes.
And well, and like anyone, you had no idea that you would be in the hospital later that day with your son in surgery.
Yeah.
The surgeon came and told you the worst news, that he wasn't going to make it. He was brain dead. Later, someone from Donor Services comes over to speak to you about donating Peanut's organs. I really imagine this is really hard to figure out, because your life is irrecoverably changed.
Yeah.
Can you share what it was like for you at the hospital in conversation with that surgeon as they were telling you about Peanut?
Well, first he asked me what happened. I told him what happened. And let me be very clear. My son was murdered, but he died saving my life. Which to live through that and then get to the hospital and then have the surgeon say, I'm afraid he's not going to survive. That in itself, I'm still dealing with that.
Yes, ma'am.
I still, every day, it's like a movie that runs over and over every single day. When he said that, I immediately got nauseous. And I just kept asking, does he have a heartbeat? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, if he has a heartbeat, he's alive. So that's all I could think about at the time. And when the donor services representative asked me about donating, I was just like, my son's not going anywhere. What are you talking about? My son has a heartbeat. He's going to live. So no, like, what do you mean? And then after a few minutes, it was like, yeah, I'm going to have to
make this decision.
Yeah.
It's a decision no one, I'm particularly sure that no parent wants to be faced with. What helped you get through those hours, those very important hours?
Prayer. All of the clergy that I know that we called on, they came or they called, and we just kept praying. Even the chaplain at the hospital prayed with us, and we just prayed and prayed about it, just prayed for direction. And I knew somebody, well, I said I would do it if he was a match for this one person. They came back and said, he's a match.
Oh.
Then they came back and said, well, we can't do it because that person was too sick to get his kidney. Then a little while later, they came back in. Well, my mom came back in and said, somebody else that's a very close family friend and a church family member needed a kidney. And I was like, well, if he can get it, then I'll do it. And they came back and said, he's a match. Because when I prayed, I asked for direction. I asked for, tell me what to do. If this is what I need to do, then make it so. And when they came back and said, the other person is a match, I was like, it's God's will. I have to do it. So, and that's what, and being able to talk to him, his name is Todd Nance.
Okay.
The one that got his kidney. And being able to talk to him regularly, that gives me comfort even now.
Okay, so I do want to talk about that. What does it mean to you to be in conversation and contact with any of the people who have been recipients of your son's gifts?
That, it keeps me going because it lets me know that not only did he save my life, even though I would rather have him stayed and I would have gone, but that's not, the way it happened. But knowing that because of his gift, there are so many people. He's still here. He's still with us. He's spread all over the country, and that's how I kind of comfort myself sometimes. He's serving his country. He's serving his community. He's out serving. He's not gone. If that makes sense.
Is there anything you would like to tell folks, particularly somebody who suddenly finds themselves facing shocking and painful sudden reality of losing a loved one, about, one, the decision, two, for them to be a donor hero, and what it's like for this person to kind of facilitate that process?
Well, Vanderbilt, Monroe Carroll, they were very instrumental in comforting me. It's like a whole support team. I mean, everybody, the nurses, even the other patients' families prayed with us and comforted us. So it was like a village. That was important. That's very important to know that you have support. They did a phenomenal job. And then prayer. Pray. I don't know. I mean, I know everybody's not religious or whatever your faith is or whatever, but ask for direction, and you'll get the answer you need. But don't block a blessing. Don't be someone's death sentence. You know what I'm saying? If you can help someone else live, then do it. That was important to me because I feel like that was my son's assignment. That had to be his assignment.
Yeah.
Do I like the assignment? Of course not. But that was his assignment. I truly believe that. And it could be your loved one's assignment to help somebody else live a little longer, to do more, to do better, to fix things that might need to be fixed with their community or their family or whatever the case may be.
Sometimes there's things that we may not understand.
Yeah.
But we have to accept.
That's right.
I understand that like a donor, a hero donor receives what is called an honor walk, where staff members from the hospital line up in the hallway to pay their respects. And Peanut received this honor walk as he was wheeled to an elevator where they were taken to surgery. So his gifts can go on to others. Do you think about that moment?
Every day. Every day. It was a beautiful thing. It's like I said, the staff, the other families, my family, and all of his friends, his close circle of friends, were all there. And it was a blessing to be able to participate in that. When we got to the elevator, I asked if I could go. Just let me go in the elevator and go down with them. I couldn't, of course, but that was the beginning of the end for me in terms of he's really gone. My son is really not physically coming home with me. But I have this village that experienced that with me, and that was important. It was very, very important.
I understand you were kind of surprised at his memorial service.
I was extremely surprised.
Because his impact was not just on the family and maybe the community and his friends at school, but it was kind of nationwide, right?
I had no idea that many people knew my son and that many people loved my son. I had people from all over the country that came to my son's. I just started getting all these messages, random messages about my son. Is it true? Is he gone? Do you mind if I come to the service? Can you let me know when the service is? And these are kids from all over the country. He was an avid gamer. Apparently, he was a really skilled.
Okay.
It was pretty popular. And so a lot of his gaming friends came to his service. There was a line of sports cars that was driven in the train, what we call a train, after the funeral and then we're going to the burial. There was a line of them, all different colors, because he loved sports cars. He could tell you what kind of engine, what they did to the car to enhance it, even what color it might be if he heard it coming from down the street a mile away.
Wow. And
then it would ride by and it would be exactly what he said it was. So he was very good at that. So, yeah, that was emotional. That's the part that got emotional for me. Seeing all these people and all these cars, it was like, my son was special to other people. I mean, of course he's special to me.
Yeah.
I had no idea he was that special to so many people.
Knowing the decision you made on his behalf, seeing, discovering now how special and how connected he was, how much he meant to people from all over the country. What do you think he'd tell you if he could talk to you right now?
I think he would say, of course he would say, love you, Ma.
Yeah.
I'm okay. He would say, I think he would say, I'm all right. I'm okay. Don't let this, do something with this. Do something with it. I'm sorry. I'm sure he would say, I'm sorry for your pain. But I'm really proud of him. And I actually that day I told him that. It was just so strange how his last day was, and my last moments with him were. If I would have known that I was really saying goodbye, there's a whole lot more that I would say, and I'm sure there's a lot he would say too.
Yeah, I really want to thank you so much for coming on, sharing us this story of Peanut being a hero and being open with us. Really appreciate it, Jay.
Anytime.
Jadeka Maison lives in Gallatin, Tennessee. Her son, Anthony Glenn Jr., lovingly known as Peanut, was a donor hero at 15. Again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll speak with two people who have experienced each side of a kidney transplant. We're going to talk to them about what that experience was like. And if you're interested in registering as an organ donor here in Tennessee, go to donatelifetn.org. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Welcome back. Today, we're talking about organ transplantation. Both being an organ donor and an organ recipient, there are over 104,000 people in the U.S. waiting for an organ right now, and roughly 86% of organ transplant candidates are in need of a kidney, according to the Organ Procurement and Transplant Network. Healthy living donors can donate one of their 2 kidneys, and when someone is in the need of a kidney transplant, they usually ask family members who have a high chance of being a match or friends who might be willing to donate. Now, joining us now to share their stories are folks who are on 2 different sides of a kidney transplant. We've got Megan Connor, who donated a kidney to her friend literally last week, everyone. And Berry Hill Mayor Dennis Sheffield, who received a kidney from his sister about 4 years ago. Megan, Mayor Sheffield, welcome to This is Nashville. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
It's an honor.
Really happy to have you both here. Megan, I want to start with you. You're literally only a few days out from surgery of donating your kidney. We're really grateful that you're here to share your story. Tell me this, how are you feeling right now?
I feel great. I mean, there's really no problem. A little uncomfortableness, but nothing too crazy. I think that the uncomfortable feeling that you feel is for a temporary time is completely worth the lifetime of I'll start crying, of what you give to someone else. So
it really is remarkable to see you up and vibrant and everything else.
Yeah, I feel great. I know. Thank you, Dennis. He just gave me a tissue.
Now, Dennis, you are well on the other side of receiving a kidney. We still want to know, though, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing fantastic. And this is a unique time in my life in that I'm making some changes. I'm going to semi-retire from a business that I've had for 14 years. I just really feel happy right now. And it's probably, I've worked hard and I've had a lot going on. So it's just a really freeing time and a happy time for me.
Now, before your personal experiences, had either one of you known anyone who received a transplant or has donated?
I did too. Do you want to start, Dennis?
I knew someone who had received a kidney transplant who had the same Dr. Schaefer that did my kidney transplant. And so I knew her story. I knew her story before. And she was very encouraging and a lot of information for me. I don't know that I knew a donor before, though.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually knew a donor. I am a running coach and fitnessy person. And actually one of my clients who has become a dear friend, I coached her to run her first marathon in 2023 for the Kidney Foundation. And she is a donor. So it's been incredible to see her go through that. So she gave to her brother many years ago, but also to have her to walk through this with me, and just say, like, our lives are no different with one kidney. We can still run marathons. We can still do all the things.
Now, I want to get a little bit into your experiences. Dennis, you were, from what I understand, you were diagnosed with kidney disease 8 years before your transplant. You were kind of living with severely limited kidney function for that time. You didn't feel great, but you were managing. Then your doctor does some blood work, gives you a call at 9 o'clock at night and says, hey, you need to be on this transplant list. What did you feel? What was going on in your mind when you got that call at 9 o'clock at night?
Well, that was Dr. Bill Fazell, and he is with nephrology at Vanderbilt. Both of us were at Vanderbilt. And I hadn't seen him in 4 months because of COVID. So earlier, I had a lot of problems. I had these incredible rashes. I didn't feel good. Urologists had already said that my creatinine levels were really high, and things were not good. But in January, I had to stop seeing him. We were running a lot of tests to find out what on earth was going on. So 4 months later, I went in to see him, and I told him about some new problems I was having, and we were going to deal with that. And he said, well, I need to do a lot of blood work. And he called me that night at 9 o'clock. And he said, you're in big trouble. And he said, I had been going with 20 to 2% kidney function in my left kidney. His wife, 8 years before, is the one who diagnosed me and said, you're probably have kidney disease and you're probably going to have a transplant, because my right kidney was atrophic and didn't work at all. He said, you have less than 5% kidney function. I don't know how you're maintaining.
Wow.
And making jokes, but that I always made jokes. He said, I'm ordering a transplant tomorrow. And it was the first of shock and denial that I went through, because I argued with him. And, I said, I don't feel bad enough to get a kidney transplant. And at one point, he finally just told me to shut up. He said, you're going to get a kidney transplant, and I'm glad you don't feel all that bad. And that was, I didn't really internalize that very well. I didn't tell anybody. And I just...
How long before you told someone?
Well, about 2 weeks later, I got a call from Vanderbilt Clinic, and they told me, we're starting the process. You're a candidate for a kidney transplant, and it's been ordered, and we have a lot of things to talk about, and you got a lot of work to do. And so I argued with her, and she told me to quit talking, that this was a good thing. And but she said, you're only a candidate. You've got to be approved. So we got a lot of work to do. And I walked out onto my loading dock. I share a loading dock with the business next door. And there was a friend of mine who knew I had been going through a lot of stuff. And he said, what's the matter? I couldn't say it. I couldn't say that I was going to have a kidney transplant. And I lost it. And that was the beginning of the reality, that it was shock but no denial. And that's when I first started telling friends and coworkers and my family.
So what happened when you told your family? Because your sister became your donor, right?
Well, there's 4 of us. So I just told them about the process. You got to understand that immediately you've got test analysis. You have a coordinator there. It's tons to do. And so nobody talked about it. I know one of the questions for me was, had I thought of asking? And no, I never thought to ask. was very alien to me. I guess I didn't feel worthy. And I couldn't imagine. And out of the blue, Denise called and said, I'm going to give you a kidney. I don't think she had told my brothers and sisters. And she had been doing the research. And so she knew, and she had very good friends who were physicians in Tampa who now are here. And he is a physician at the VA at Vanderbilt. And she knew that a living donor gave you such a better chance of success. Being a sibling with 6 points of criteria that matched, that there was nobody on this planet who could give me a better chance than her.
All right. Now, Megan, walk us back to when you found out that your friend needed a kidney. How did you find out, and what was your reaction?
She actually sent out an email to, thank you, Dennis,
I have one.
To a few of us and just asked us if we would be willing to test to be a donor. And I did not hesitate at all. I was like, let's go. So I just jumped in and started the process, and we found out that I was a match for her. And then I was really like, let's go. So
You don't seem like the person who hesitates in much.
No. I like to live a big life, and I want this one shot that we have here to mean something. So when this opportunity came around, I didn't even hesitate. It was just, let's do it.
How did you feel when you found out that you were a match for your friend?
I was so excited, and it kept getting more exciting as each test happens. There's so much. It kind of took over my life because there's so many tests that you have to go through, and it's like if you do this test and you pass, you can go on to the next test. So I kept, hoping that that I would get through the next test, and then you get really, really involved, and you just keep hoping, and then I got to, when we found out that I could give to her, we got it all on video. It was so emotional, and it's pretty amazing.
I want to hear this from both of you. What is or was the hardest part of this process for you both? Dennis.
Well, you need to understand, because I was never on dialysis, I didn't have as hard a road as most recipients. And because I'm dumb enough not to come to a reality of just how sick I was, I just was able to maintain. So the hard things that happened to me were certain other things that happened that related. For instance, I had percutaneous nephrolithotomy. Do you know what that is?
No.
That is an ancient Chinese torture technique that if Spectre and James Bond movies would have known about, the 007 would have given up all the nuclear codes and the movie would have been over in 15 minutes. They stick a tube through your back and they pulverize the kidney and suck it out through the tube.
Wow.
I had to do 2 of those in 1 month. You're not asleep when they put the tube in, and you're awake when they pull the tube out. You're only awake when they do the surgery. And that was she and I were out of the hospital in 2.5 days. The first time, that was an 8-day in the hospital recovery, a week off, and you got to do it again. That was about all much fun as I ever wanted to have. Now, that was almost 30 years ago. So those were the hard things. I also, I ended up having syncopal episodes. I had heart block. Don't want to tell you about that. So I was able to get a pacemaker, the first micro pacemaker at Vanderbilt. This all happened in a very short period of time. If I hadn't have gotten that, my heart hadn't been okay, I never would have been a candidate. So those were the harder things. I guess I'd been maintaining so long, I didn't have that hard of a time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, it was scary. The syncopal things where you faint and you heart block, you you're gone. And I'm lucky to be alive. Those were horrible. Those are what I have nightmares about. Because I think Megan will say the same thing. Vanderbilt is a miracle of God.
Oh, yeah.
And the culture there, that's in any transplant hospital, is so amazing. They really comfort you. You just, you know you're going to do well. You're in good hands.
Yeah, yeah.
Megan, what was the most challenging part for you?
I think for me, I worked for myself, and just the not knowing about taking the time off to do the testing, and then how the recovery would go, how much time I'll be out of work, wondering, am I going to be able to still run marathons? Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to do that? But there's so many resources. There's a government program that gives you a grant for lost wages. I mean, there's just every excuse you could come up with. There's a reason to move forward and do it. I connected with a group called KDA, the Kidney Donor Athletes, who really walked through how the recovery was going to go, and how so many of them are just, someone's hiking Mount Kilimanjaro 6 weeks after they gave a kidney. And I was like, okay, this is, so I think for me, that was the hardest thing. But there's always, a lot of people will look for excuses, but again, like there's, you can't with this. It's so much more than any excuse that you could ever come up with.
I've only got time left for this. I'd love to hear from both of you. Megan, tell me this. What do you want your friend to know about the choice you made to give a part of yourself to her?
Oh, she's probably listening. That I do not regret it at all. And that I think that my life now, only 6 days after this, is better because of doing this. I've already met amazing people. I've already met, my life has already been changed. So I think that, your life does change when you decide to do this, and for better. So I think that there's no regrets. It's the most beautiful gift I could ever give, and I hope to see her prosper and live and
Thank you. Dennis, what do you hope your sister will know about how you feel about the gift she gave to you?
It's like Megan was saying, I'm a walking, we're a recipient of something that gives us life and a future. And that I'll never be able to express the appreciation. By the way, we named our kidney Steve, and Megan, tell him the name of your kidney.
Named mine Kidney Rogers.
Kidney Rogers.
Yeah, but my recipient renamed her my name, so her name is Megan now.
Megan Steve.
So Denise, she'll listen to the show tonight. She's in Tampa, and she just knows. I never can tell her enough how much I appreciate it. But I am the recipient. I am the walking miracle. Megan and Denise are the angels. You have given a gift that we can never repay. And you were like a Heisman Trophy winner. You will always be that angel. And you will always be someone who can say, if you're thinking about doing this, do it.
Yeah.
And I can just say, thank you. God bless you,
Well, bless you both. And thank you both for being here. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your journeys, and continued health, strength, and growth for you both and your family and friends. Megan Connor recently donated one of her kidneys to one of her friends here in Nashville, and Berry Hill Mayor Dennis Sheffield received a kidney transplant from his sister a few years ago. I want to thank you both for being here. You got a hell of a sister. And you're a hell of a friend.
And you've got a hell of a voice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you
right.
for sharing.
We're going to take one final break. Stay with us. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. Welcome back to today's show. We're talking about organ transplants. Now, here in Nashville and Middle Tennessee, we're very fortunate to have local access to the Vanderbilt University Medical Center Transplant Center, which is a leading transplant center in the United States, performing hundreds of transplants a year, including 174 heart transplants last year alone, as well as having the capabilities to perform dual organ transplants. Tennessee is also served by the Tennessee Donor Services, an organization that saves and improves lives by connecting life-saving organ, eye, and tissue donations to patients who need them. Now, here to answer some of the most common questions about organ donation and on-the-ground realities about transplants are Dr. Kelly Schlendorf. She's the medical director of VUMC's Adult Heart Transplant Program, and Jill Grandas. She is the executive director of Tennessee Donor Services. Kelly and Jill, welcome to This is Nashville.
Thanks, Khalil.
Thank you for having us.
Really great to have you both. Okay, so before we get into some of the myths and the facts, tell us what your day-to-day job is and the responsibilities and what they look like. Kelly?
Well, as medical director of the Adult Heart Transplant Program, a lot of what I do in partnership with my surgical director, Ash Shah, is really to help steer our program to ensure that we're doing right by both our patients, the patients who we care for, and also by the donors and their families who have chosen to give the gift of life. So on a day-to-day basis for me, that includes caring for patients in and outside the hospital, helping to oversee the processes and the protocols that we use to guide who makes it onto the transplant list, how we manage them on the list, how we take care of them forever after following transplant. And then in the background of all of this, my colleagues and I spend a lot of time collaborating and thinking about how we can do what we do now, but do it better with new innovative technologies, better drug therapies, sometimes just talking to our patients about what's working and what's not.
Jill, what does your day-to-day look like?
Well, the responsibility of Tennessee Donor Services is multifaceted. We are responsible for community engagement and educating the patients and the community at large about organ donation and what it means to become a donor. We're also responsible to be the responder to the hospital. We are getting calls daily about patients who are eligible to become donors. So we respond, answer questions of the hospitals, speak to families, and then ultimately connect those donor patients to the patients that are waiting for a life-saving transplant.
All right. Thank you both. Okay, so I want to get through some basic questions about organ donation. I'd love for both of you to help walk us through some of these answers. Jill, who is eligible to be an organ donor?
It's anyone can become a donor because we're not restricted by age or medical history. Older patients can still donate some type of tissue or their cornea tissue. We do have an evaluation process by which we would evaluate patients' eligibility to be specific organ donors through evaluating their organs at the time that we get the referral. So really, all of us have the opportunity to give some type of gift. It's really the ultimate gift of life and a legacy that a person can give upon their death.
Is it a little bit different? I just recall going to donate blood and they're asking questions like, are you a smoker? Because they don't want necessarily, as one person put it, they didn't want tainted blood in that case. So smokers and people who are, active drinkers can donate other parts of their organs as well.
Absolutely. Yes, that is not something that rules out organ donation or tissue donation.
Okay, how many lives can a deceased donor save?
One donor hero can save as many as 8 lives through organ donation. Their heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and intestine can all be used for transplantation. And that same donor that is eligible for tissue donation can improve the lives of 75 or more people through skin donations, for example, that treat burns and wounds, corneas that restore sight. heart valves. If the whole heart cannot be used for transplantation, then the valves can be used.
Interesting. How can one register to be a donor here in Tennessee?
Well, in Tennessee, you can register at the DMV when you get your driver's license, or you can go to our website, which is bethegifttoday.com, and learn about donation, learn the details, more details about it. So you can make your decision about what you want to donate. You can specify if that's something that you want to do, or you can just sign up to be a donor and be an organ and tissue donor.
Okay, I want to get to some of the myths out there. People are very concerned that if they register to be an organ donor, doctors aren't simply not going to work as hard to save their lives. That is a conspiracy theory that's out there. What do you want to say to anyone who has that type of fear?
Absolutely not. The healthcare team is there to put every effort into saving a person's life. Only when a patient is declining to death would we be contacted to evaluate the patient. So we have very clear guidelines. We work with every one of our hospitals to assure that they know what is the timing of that phone call that comes to us so that we can make an evaluation for organ or tissue donation, and only at that point would we be contacted.
All right, now, Kelly, you work with heart transplant patients and teams. There's something extraordinary about any transplant, but a heart transplant feels especially personal. You've spent a majority of your career working with heart transplant patients and the teams that serve them. What do you want those of us who have no personal experience? What do you want us to know about heart transplants?
Well, what I want listeners to know is mainly that the heart transplant field is really a process, and it's one that takes a village to achieve. You know, I think, Khalil, there's often a misconception in the lay public that transplant is one and done medical procedure, kind of like a knee replacement. Patients show up at Vanderbilt, we put them on a wait list, they go for surgery, and then they leave the hospital and live happily ever after. And the reality is actually very different than that. On the adult side, many of our patients have been living with heart failure for years before they come to Vanderbilt seeking transplant. When they reach Vanderbilt, they go through an extensive evaluation process to ensure first that their hearts are indeed sick enough to need transplanted, but also that the rest of them is well enough, and importantly, that they'll be good stewards of a new heart, which, as you know, is a very scarce resource. So for patients who are ultimately deemed eligible and we place on the wait list, their wait list times can vary. Some of them are too sick to leave the hospital while they wait. And after their transplant surgery, they remain on immunosuppressive drugs really for the rest of their lives, and so are at risk for complications like rejection, infection, cancer, and other things. And so while it is true that the transplant surgery itself is obviously a key step in the process, it is only one of many, many steps in the process. And the surgeon is only one of many, many people who touch these patients in their transplant journeys.
You say that it's very rare heart transplants. It's difficult. What is the donor matching? How does that work? What does it look like?
Well, donor matching differs a little bit from organ to organ, but in all cases, it's a process done by a computerized system that's overseen by the OPTN, which you referenced earlier. And it really is a system that compares a potential donor's information, including things like blood type, to information about patients on the wait list in a way that prioritizes those patients who have the closest match and the most urgent medical need. In other words, patients who are the sickest, while also considering factors like geographic proximity of the donor hospital to the transplant hospital, really in an effort to reduce the amount of time that's needed for organ retrieval. And so when that process takes place in a way that ends with a potential donor heart, for example, being available to a patient on Vanderbilt's wait list, what ends up happening then is that I and one of my surgical colleagues together really scrutinize all of the donor information that's made available by Tennessee Donor Services, for example, to decide, number one, is this a heart that's healthy enough to be transplanted? And number two, is it the best match for the patient on our wait list to whom it's being offered?
I imagine once a heart is harvested, it's going to take, it's on a clock to get there. How are hearts transported to transplant centers?
Yeah, the transport piece is really interesting, and I think it does deserve to be highlighted because most organs that we transplant at Vanderbilt, certainly hearts, come from donors who are located at hospitals that are sometimes hundreds of miles from Vanderbilt. And so We at Vanderbilt have incredibly dedicated organ recovery teams that are ready to travel, often on very little notice, to retrieve these organs, flying many times in the middle of the night to bring these organs back to Vanderbilt. Historically, organs have been transported on ice, so at 0 degrees Celsius, and sometimes is in something as simple as an igloo cooler. But what's happened in recent years is that there's been a lot of innovation in this space aimed at finding ways to transport organs to reduce the likelihood of injury to the organ during the time that it's outside the human body. And so nowadays there are devices available, some of which are commercially available, some of which are still investigational, that either transport the organ in a warm beating state, for example, when we're talking about the heart, that's called machine perfusion, or in a cold hypothermic state, but using very regulated temperature control. And believe it or not, sometimes even a few degrees change in temperature can have a big impact on outcomes after transplantation.
How long can a heart survive outside of the body?
Well, the important thing to know is less time is better, but with some of the technologies I just referenced, we're able to actually extend that time and do so safely.
So Vanderbilt is a leading heart transplant center. When it comes, what innovations or advancements are you most hopeful for within this practice?
Well, I think there's a lot. What I'm most hopeful for, and I think what all of us are most hopeful for, is really ongoing scientific discovery that allows us to do two things. First, that allows us to expand the donor pool by reducing the number of potential donor hearts that are currently being discarded so that we get more patients who need transplant to transplant. And second, really scientific discovery that allows us to better personalize care after transplant in the interests of improving long-term survival and quality of life. And what's exciting to me is that a lot of this discovery work is happening at Vanderbilt right now. Just by way of example, over the past few years, we've established really a rapidly growing biorepository of heart tissue that's collected from our transplant recipients during routine heart biopsies and with their consent. And we're using that tissue to try and understand on a basic cellular, molecular, genetic level what makes patients who suffer from certain complications like rejection differ from patients who don't. Because we hope to use this knowledge to really guide the way that we treat patients and to treat patients in a tailored way. And personalized care is really what Vanderbilt excels at.
Okay, we have one final question for you both. You both face families and patients experiencing really painful and difficult, yet also hopeful experiences of organ transplants. Jill, tell me this. What keeps you doing this work day in, day out?
Oh my! Well, I've been doing this work for 38 years. So every day I get out of bed in the morning knowing that through the work that we're doing, lives are saved. Donor families receive hope. It is a source of peace for them to know that something positive has happened. And on the receiving end, for the patients who receive this, they get a second chance. And it's really a miracle. Organ donation and transplant is it's a life-saving miracle, and we are so proud to be a part of it.
Kelly?
Yeah, I would echo Jill's thoughts exactly. At Vanderbilt, we are the busiest heart transplant program in the world and the third busiest transplant center in the country. But while we're proud of the numbers, it's really not about the numbers. It's about what those numbers represent and what can be accomplished when you bring together a team of individuals who really number in the hundreds, but who share one focus, and that is to shepherd patients on this journey that is long and hard and frightening. For me personally, it's about being a small part of a very big mission, which is both supremely rewarding but also very humbling.
Dr. Kelly Schlendorf is the medical director of VUMC's Adult Heart Transplant Program, and Jill Grandas is the executive director of Tennessee Donor Services. Thank you both for being with us today, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Katherine Ceicys. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our technical director and board operators, Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. Special thanks to Molly Hassett-Blanton. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. And the conversation does not end here. Comment and tell us what you want to hear from the show by leaving us a message, 615-751-2500. Hit us up on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Twitter, or X. Whatever they call it. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekulona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and be good to each other.